Okay, so good afternoon and welcome to RSSL's webinar on the immunity revolution as a consequence of the COVID-19 pandemic. I hope you're all staying safe and well during the current situation we all find ourselves in. I'm delighted to introduce my colleagues Carole, Bingley and Reid, who will be delivering the technical aspects of the webinar this afternoon on behalf of RSSL, as well as our guest speaker, Tracey Sanderson from Sensory Dimensions. And I'll be here to support them all. And my name is Staniforth, and I'm Head of Food Sales within our commercial team. So Carole is going to cover immunity from a product development perspective, Rachel from an analytical perspective, and Tracey is going to provide a consumer research perspective too. So before we get started, let me just share with you some information in case you're having any technical issues or wish to pose a question as the team are presenting. So for any technical issues, please send a short message within the chat box on the right-hand side, and then our team here will respond to you directly. And while we're presenting, if you have any questions you wish to ask, please feel free to submit these in the questions box, and we'll then do our best to answer questions at the end of the formal presentation. And of course, if you have a confidential question, please email me separately and we'll come back to you independently. Okay, so now all the admin has been sorted, let's proceed with the webinar, and let me start with telling you a little bit more about RSSL so you can understand why we're able to share our knowledge with you today. So RSSL supported the global food industry with a broad range of services since 1987, and we continue to do this even during the COVID-19 situation. Our working practices have adapted, as has everybody else's, to ensure we meet government guidelines, but our scientists continue to be on site completing projects for our clients, and we work for many of the top global companies right through to small startups too. Our UCAS accredited facility in Reading is where our team of 330 staff are based, and our technical expertise covers a broad range of services including chemistry, physical sciences, biochemistry, as well as food technology, so which are all relevant for today's subject. And one of our key strengths is our multidisciplinary teams available to support our clients. So as you can see, hopefully from this side, our expertise as a business is extremely broad, and we provide a range of services to support both innovation programs as well as food safety and quality manufacturing support. Our product development services include food technologists working on the bench, developing and optimizing recipes, through to analytical support for your internal NPD teams, as well as regulatory support for health claims. And it is this R&D expertise that is key to today's subject. So I'll now hand over to Tracey, Carole and Rachel to present the technical content of the webinar and tell us more about the immunity revolution and things to consider from a product development, analytical, as well as a consumer research perspective. And then I shall come back and we'll do our best to answer the questions that you've asked. So over to Tracey.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you to everyone at RSSL for inviting me to participate today. The topic of my section is how we can use sensory and consumer research to identify and shape opportunities in the immunity space, and how research can be used to inform the development of early stage prototypes. So a little bit about Sensory Dimensions. Sensory Dimensions is a sensory and consumer research consultancy business. We work with food, drink, personal care, home care and healthcare companies. We are based in the UK and are unusual in that we have our own facilities in Reading and in Nottingham to carry out our research, but we also coordinate and manage consumer research across the whole of the UK and, of course, internationally. Our objective is always to create a unique solution that best fits the needs of our clients, and to do that we pick on a range of methodologies from qualitative, quantitative and sensory toolkits in order to create the best solution for our clients' needs. So today I thought we'd take a brief look at how immunity looks now in this changing world, and then how do we understand what the consumer needs now? What are the questions that we need to answer? How can we get to the consumer in this lockdown environment? And ways the business can understand the sensory territory it is operating in. And finally, I wanted to say a little bit about product claims. So pre-coronavirus, most people were probably only aware of their immunity when it broke down and when they caught a cold, seasonal flu or an infection that required some more serious medical intervention and antibiotics. Suddenly, immunity is a word that we're hearing daily, linked with other words such as herd, passport and vaccine. And whilst immune-boosting foods and drinks and healthcare products are certainly not new, the immunity sector has undoubtedly been given a huge boost by the COVID pandemic. Some have described it as the world's biggest advertising campaign. But where does COVID leave innovation? As we gradually emerge from lockdown, no one can be thinking that life hasn't changed. For businesses, including food businesses, we can't assume that what was before is still for now. Do we know what consumers want now? This is the new reality. Consumers are queuing to get into stores. There was less choice, and whilst that has now changed, retailers are still not wanting to launch new products in the forthcoming months. One-way systems in many stores give us little time to browse because we are aware of people behind us. Do people browse more online? I suspect not. All of this may have changed the attitude to the big weekly shop. It was a rare thing before lockdown, but is now experiencing a strong resurgence. One thing is definitely clear. Our shopping experience and so our exposure to brands and new product launches is definitely changing. Our eating experiences have also changed. Prior to lockdown, some 30% of food was eaten outside of the home. Lockdown may have rekindled the family mealtime and so a change in the foods eaten. Layer onto this the emotional factors about getting and spreading the virus, about changes in disposable income, up for some and seriously reduced for others, and we are in totally new territory. How has opinion changed? In a world seeking protection, is plastic still the enemy? Where does sustainability sit now in the hierarchy of consumer issues? And so, when we take all of this together, what does it mean for innovation? I think it means that businesses must hold any knowledge they held in the past and any beliefs that they've thought to be strong very, very lightly. The changes that we're experiencing may be permanent, they may be temporary, but it is certainly clear that innovation needs to start with a clean sheet. You need to put the past behind you, innovate from where we are now, and understand the new market. This slide has been updated from a face-to-face session we ran just before lockdown on the innovation process and the tools in the toolkit that can help you identify and understand a problem and an opportunity as the consumer sees it. And I have highlighted 4 key approaches. First of all, knowledge mapping. This is the time to look back at what you thought you knew about the consumer and about immunity and pressure test your previous theories. The approach you were taking pre-lockdown, is it even relevant now? Where does immunity sit in the consumer's list of issues? don't get swept along. The consumer may think immunity is important, but they might have a very different view of how to deal with it now, having received the barrage of information that's been available during COVID. To obtain new knowledge, we need to observe the consumer and to talk to them. What are they doing? How are they addressing the issue? Are they using new products, different products? And what is missing? What do they seek now? This observation can lead to the identification of new product opportunities, and from this we can work with the consumer to design the experience of these products. What will they look like? What flavours will they have? What ingredients will they contain? And how will they be packaged? Using exploratory sensory work, we can scope out the existing category and identify white spaces and further refine our targets for product development. Has the scope for immunity products broadened beyond dairy and juice, or has it narrowed to more medicinal type formats? What ingredients and products are credible now? So I wanted to say, first of all, something about the knowledge mapping process. So knowledge mapping is highly efficient. It's relatively quick, taking anything from hours to a few days. It's very affordable because all the information it uses is data that the company already has. And it is actionable because it allows you to see very clearly what to do next. So how does it work? First of all, we define the business question. So in this case, for example, we might want to understand the consumer's view of dietary fibre and how that relates to immunity. We invite a cross-section of people from the business, R&D, marketing and insights, product development, other scientists, people in advertising. We may assign these people pre-work in advance to review certain areas and to bring data. These data may be tacit knowledge, which is always up for challenge, but particularly so now, scientific data and social media reports. At the sessions, all the data is brought together, it's sifted and shared, and used to re-examine the business question. By laying out and mapping what we know about an issue, we immediately identify what we don't know. This process also identifies old thinking that might need re-examining. We can then prioritise what we don't know and assign actions to fill the gaps. This prioritisation will shape the hypotheses we need to test in future consumer research. Once we have our research plans and hypotheses, we can start to talk to consumers to find out what is going on. So this exploratory qualitative work will really help you quickly get under the skin of your consumer and find out how they are thinking. So we can do this exploratory work amongst our sensory dimensions consumer community. We ask selected respondents to do various tasks at home and come together online to discuss how they got on. So they might do shopping tasks, they might keep diaries, they might cook certain dishes or other tasks as appropriate for the objectives. We interact with the respondents throughout the process, giving them questions to answer and tasks to do using online forums and collecting their responses through answers, text answers, photographs, video uploads and so on, so we can really get an insight into their experience. So this slide shows us some of the objectives that we might begin to explore in the immunity space. It's probably safe to assume that everyone is now an expert in this space, but how does this impact their belief? Are the cues to the efficacy of products the same as they were before? So do people still think that food can help them with their immunity? Do more people know about pre and probiotics and vitamins now? And do they believe that they will really help them fight COVID? Can they get the same feeling of security from a dairy shot, or does taking a pill or a Linctus that has a more traditional pharmaceutical format enhance their confidence? Many people's lifestyles have changed during the pandemic. Has this created more or less time for self-care? Why would they use an immune-enhancing product now? Is this the same as before? And what does this mean for their expectations of the products? Is this something for them, or is it something that they would consider for their elderly parents or their children? What does the consumer expect from your concept? What sensory attributes cue immunity? For example, do strong colours promote effectiveness? Do fruit and vegetable flavours cue natural? Are spicy warming flavours required to create the sense that it is working? And what about lesser known ingredients such as algae, rice bran, ginseng and other herbals? Do people know about them? Do they understand them? And most importantly, do they trust that they will work? Are there more or fewer barriers now? For example, does a change in economic circumstances mean that price becomes more of a factor? And if so, what compromises will they make? And of course, what about the packaging? Does a blister pack for a vitamin supplement create a more pharmaceutical feel? And is this a good thing or not? Once you have these data and the business has developed some prototypes, you can work with the consumer to get some early stage feedback. An in-home trial is a typical way to get this early feedback. Again, we would use our sensory dimensions community, carefully recruiting your target user types. We would place products with them and use discussion forums on online apps to have conversations, receive uploaded images and videos, and record their consumption experiences. So we'd be looking at determining consumer response to a new product, maybe amongst users and non-users of the category. We'd be exploring how consumers use the product or how they think they would use it, and the importance of the information that you provide to them. We'd also be looking at performance from a point of view of does it make people feel confident and do they feel well? And we'd explore propensity to purchase and fit within their existing lifestyle. So typically an in-home trial will be followed up with in-depth conversations on a one-to-one or a group basis, so sort of focus groups or depth interviews. And it's at this stage that we will begin to define very clear sensory design guidelines for further product development. How should the prototypes be changed to meet the concept? What colours, what flavours, what size, what should the texture be like, and so on, leading us to define what the sensory attributes of the ideal product will be. In parallel to this, it's very important early on that the whole project team experiences the prototypes and their competitive set, so that they understand the sensory market and can better understand the findings and feedback from the consumer. And there are several methods available that will enable you to do this. They work really well if people can be in a room together, but we've been using all of them remotely during lockdown and have found that as long as you can get the right products to people in the right condition with good preparation instructions and guidance, you can get really good results from these methodologies. In addition, you can of course supplement these methods by sensory profiling of your sample set by a trained sensory panel. Finally, I just want to mention claims. there is absolutely no doubt that development of a product in this space will involve some form of claims. So just briefly, the types of claims that you might want to make. Functional and performance claims related to the product as a whole or its ingredients are probably key here, and Carole is going to discuss this in more detail. But you might also want to consider sensory claims or claims around preference, particularly in relation to competitors in your space. So it's important to remember that any claim will require validation, and this usually requires some form of additional research, which will need good, strong experimental design, taking account of statistical considerations as well as good science. For example, to prove parity requires a very different number of respondents to proving superiority. But you should also consider the believability of your claim. It's no point putting a claim on a product if people have absolutely no confidence that it's actually true. And if your claim is believable, it's also worth considering, can your brand actually own that claim? Or does it work better with the brand culture and the ethos of a competitor? And I would advise you to save a lot of money by making these investigations early on. So that was a very quick tour around some of the methods and considerations available and ways we can begin to help you identify new opportunities in the immunity space and work them towards first stage prototype ideas. I'm now going to hand over to Carole, who is going to discuss launches and ingredients. Thank you.
Thanks, Tracey, for that overview of approaches to understand what the consumer is thinking and how to identify opportunities for your brand. Hello, I'm Carole Bingley, and I'm the technical specialist in the product development team here at RSSL. I'm sure that lots of you have seen a huge increase in the number of ingredients and nutrients being promoted for immune health. In the time we have today, I can only scratch the surface, so I would like to focus on vitamins and minerals, ingredients connected with gut health, botanicals, protein, and omega-3. So starting with vitamins and minerals, this slide and the next slide show the vitamins and minerals which have been proven to play a role in maintenance of the immune system. Vitamin C has long been associated with immunity, and people often consume orange juice or take vitamin C supplements in the hope of reducing the severity of a cold. In addition, there has been a lot of talk around vitamin D status and susceptibility to COVID-19. So it seems that these two vitamins are well established in the minds of consumers. However, as you can see from the slides, vitamin A, some of the B vitamins, folate, copper, iron, selenium and zinc also play an important role. It's important to note that a deficiency of these vitamins and minerals can result in impaired immune function, but it does not mean that high doses will have further benefits. In fact, excess levels of water-soluble nutrients will be just excreted by the body, whereas very high levels of fat-soluble vitamins are known to have adverse effects. The slides also highlight some food sources of the various nutrients. And generally, nutritional advice is that a balanced diet should provide all vitamins and minerals that we require. The one exception to this is vitamin D, because our main source is the action of sunlight on the skin. It's recommended that everyone should take a supplement during the winter months and potentially all year round if exposure to sunlight is limited due to a variety of reasons. And looking out the window in the UK today, one of those would be the weather here. In relation to the current pandemic, NICE and Public Health England have published a report to state that there is no evidence to support taking vitamin D supplements to prevent COVID-19 or other respiratory illnesses. However, they do acknowledge that further research is required to test the possibility that vitamin D deficiency may predispose to COVID-19. The vitamins and minerals shown on the slides are the only nutrients which enable an EU authorised nutrition and health claim linked to the immune system. And I'll talk about this on the next slide. So anyone with any experience of the nutrition and health claim system will know that it's extremely rigorous. The scientific evidence is scrutinised thoroughly before the panel makes a judgment, and the number of successful submissions is far outnumbered by those which have been rejected. This has been designed to reassure consumers that claims made on products are based on sound scientific data. I've included the link for the EFSA website on the slide, and on the website you can see all of the submissions, including those which have not been authorised by EFSA. If you wish to make a claim relating to the immune system on a product sold in the EU, then it must contain at least one of the vitamins and minerals shown on the slide, at levels which would at least correspond to a source of that nutrient. You can also see that the wording for the claim refers to the normal function of the immune system, and it does not allow for claims around boosting immunity. If you're adding vitamins and minerals in order to use a health claim on pack, then it's critical that you can confirm that these nutrients are present at the required levels throughout the shelf life, and Rachel will cover this a little bit later on. This slide shows a couple of products fortified with vitamins and minerals and making immune claims on the front of pack. This Special K Immune Support cereal provides vitamins D, B6, B12, folic acid, zinc and iron. Licorice bites are from Sweden and they're fortified with vitamin B6. And when I was looking for products, I actually found it quite difficult to find products which make a front of pack immune claim but just contain vitamins and minerals. Most products seem to be adding the vitamins and minerals to enable a claim, but then combining with one or more of the other ingredients that I will now go on to talk about. Gut health. So 70 to 80% of the immune system is said to reside in the gut, and the many functions of the gut microbiome and immunity are shown on the slide. This has meant there's been a huge amount of interest and research into the impact of ingredients which can modify the gut microbiome. Broadly speaking, these ingredients include probiotics, which many consumers are familiar with, prebiotics, which consumers may have heard of but don't quite understand what they are, and postbiotics, which I'm sure that most consumers will not have heard of. On the slide, the Global Prebiotic Association of a prebiotic is given, and soluble fibres such as Inulin are probably the best known of the prebiotics, but there's a wide range of non-digestible carbohydrates which can display prebiotic activity. Other compounds such as polyphenols have also been shown to have prebiotic properties. There's particular interest in 1,3-beta-glucan, which is found in baker's yeast, algae, and certain types of mushrooms. This is structurally distinct from the beta-glucan found in oats and barley, which is known to have cardiovascular benefits. A number of clinical studies have shown a positive association between supplementation with 1,3-beta-glucan and reduced symptoms of upper respiratory tract infections. The mode of action is partly related to the prebiotic effects of this ingredient, but 1,3-beta-glucan is also thought to play a role in priming innate immune cells, which can help with a healthy immune system. The term probiotics refers to live desirable bacteria, which are usually found in fermented foods, although it's now possible to add shelf-stable strains of bacteria to non-fermented products. The most commonly used commercial organisms are strains of lactobacilli and bifidobacteria. These organisms are able to colonize the gut temporarily and perform a number of functions related to the immune system. Because colonization is temporary, regular consumption is required to maintain any benefits. So these bacteria are often included in products which are eaten on a daily basis. Moving on to the less well-known postbiotics. The term postbiotic refers to the metabolic byproducts or beneficial waste products of probiotic bacteria, and this can include organic acids, bacteriocins, and enzymes. As postbiotics are in their infancy compared with pre and probiotics, there are currently no products on the market containing these compounds, but it's worth watching out to see how this area develops. This slide shows a few products linking gut health and immunity. Most of you will be familiar with Actimel, and you can see the word immune system under the product name. In smaller font, it states with vitamin D and B6. So the vitamins are being added to enable a claim, but clearly this product is positioned on the benefit of probiotic bacteria. At least 30 health claims related to probiotic bacteria and immunity have been submitted to EFSA, but to date, the scientific evidence has not been sufficient to substantiate these claims. However, this does reflect the amount of research in the area. The granola product contains bacillus coagulans and chicory fibre, which will be inulin or fructooligosaccharides. This one does not have any added vitamins and minerals, and hence there's no front of pack claim relating to immunity. However, on the back of pack, it says that having the right gut bacteria of the friendly sort is vital for a healthy immune system. The Nurture Fruity Water is targeted at children's lunchboxes, and the claim around supporting immunity is permitted due to the inclusion of vitamins and minerals, but this product also contains the 1,3-beta-glucan, and this is highlighted on the back of pack, but not linked to immunity. However, if you visit the website for the product, they state that the ingredient has been clinically proven to naturally strengthen key immune cells that keep the body healthy. And when I was looking for products, I chose the granola and the fruity water to demonstrate that if you're using ingredients which have credible scientific evidence, but as yet no authorised health claim, then you may wish to consider alternative approaches to communicate the potential benefits of these ingredients to your consumers. Moving on to botanicals. The term botanicals is generally understood to refer to compounds from plants which have potential medicinal properties. It also refers to plants which are used to give flavour to drinks such as gin, but for the purposes of today's webinar, we're focusing on the medicinal properties. Traditional and ancient medicines have long made use of botanicals to treat a whole host of illnesses, and there's growing interest from consumers in these ingredients, as this also taps into the trend of naturalness and clean label. Evidence for the efficacy of botanicals is patchy, and there are no EFSA authorised health claims, but there are published clinical trials for some of the ingredients, and more research and investment is ongoing in the area. There is an abundance of botanical ingredients being promoted for immunity benefits, and the most popular are shown on the chart, which is taken from Nintel NPD. I'll talk about a few of these and some of the upcoming botanicals over the next few slides. As shown on the data from Mintel, ginger is the most popular botanical used in products with an immune claim, and this is because it's been long associated with home remedies. Ginger is thought to reduce inflammation, normalise the immune function, and it potentially protects against bacteria. However, none of these effects have been proven. Another benefit of ginger is the taste profile, which can provide a cue to the consumer that the product is efficacious. The vitamins and minerals are mostly tasteless at typical use levels, so the spicy kick from ginger can give a reason to believe. Curcumin is the main ingredient in turmeric, and this is also a very popular botanical, either alone or in combination with ginger. Again, there's a long history of use for this ingredient, and curcumin is reported to have anti-inflammatory properties. It can contribute strong colour, so this does need to be considered when using it in formulations. All the products on this slide are fortified with vitamins and/or minerals to enable the immune claim. The inclusion of ginger and turmeric will help to support this message in the mind of the consumer, and it is probably more likely that the consumer will attribute any immunity effects to the ginger and turmeric rather than to the vitamins and minerals. Moving on to a few of the newer botanicals, which are mainly being used in supplements, but I think we're likely to see these move over into food and beverages. Here we have elderberry extract, olive leaf extract, and andrographis. Elderberry extract has been used for centuries to support immunity and was actually the main botanical used in the Spanish flu pandemic. Some trials have shown a reduction in the severity of cold symptoms, and a structure function claim is permitted on nutritional supplements in the US, but there's currently no authorised health claims for Europe. The product on the slide combines elderberry with 1,3-beta-glucan, acerola cherry and zinc. And this shows again that many manufacturers are going for a multi-ingredient approach. Suppliers of olive leaf extract claim that it's been shown to inhibit a key enzyme present in the flu virus, and this is necessary for the virus to penetrate cells and proliferate in the host. This activity is being used to promote the extract as immune strengthening, and the syrup on the slide claims to relieve cough, colds and flu. Andrographis is a flowering plant, and the leaves and stems are used in Ayurvedic medicine. Today, it's popular as a supplement in Sweden and other Scandinavian countries for fighting off cold and flu infections. The product shown here is a combination of Andrographis with echinacea, olive leaf extract and reishi mushrooms, which is one of the high beta-glucan types of mushroom. Andrographis does have a strong bitter taste, which could require careful formulation in foods and beverages to ensure that a palatable product is achieved. Moving on to protein. Protein has many functions in the body, but as it says on the slide, one of the most important functions is maintenance of the immune system. In general, protein deficiency is not viewed as an area of nutritional concern in the UK and other developed countries. However, there are groups of people who are vulnerable to protein deficiency, and these groups may benefit from supplementation with additional protein. The graph shows that protein intake tends to decrease with age, and elderly people are most at risk of protein deficiency. And given the vulnerability of this age group to COVID-19, it would seem sensible to ensure that this population receives sufficient protein, both through consumption of high-protein foods and potentially fortified products. Additionally, veganism and meat reduction is a huge trend, and according to reports, this has grown further throughout the pandemic. The pie chart shows the breakdown of protein contribution in a typical diet, and as you can see, meat, fish, dairy and eggs make up around 2/3 of the protein. Consumers looking to limit or eliminate these foods from their diets should take care to ensure that this doesn't result in a reduction in protein intake by rebalancing their diet and selecting alternative products with a similar amount of protein as the meat or dairy equivalent. In addition to total protein intake, consumption of certain proteins may be advantageous in optimizing immune health. Immunoglobulins are proteins which make up part of the immune system, and colostrum is very high in immunoglobulins, oligosaccharides and other bioactive ingredients. So there are companies now offering bovine colostrum as an ingredient to support immune health for use in products in sports nutrition, products for children and functional foods. Again, there's no authorised health claim for protein, so the products on the slide combine protein with vitamins and minerals to enable immune-related claims in the high-protein products. And finally, just to mention omega-3 fatty acids. We're used to seeing products high in omega-3 being linked to heart and brain health, but less so with immunity. However, evidence is building to support the role of omega-3 in protecting against the cytokine storms that arise in respiratory disease. EPA and DHA are the omega-3 fatty acids found in fish oil, and these are described as bioactive omega-3 fatty acids. These fatty acids are known to have anti-inflammatory properties, and they are also metabolized to specialized pro-resolving mediators, or SPMs, which are known to switch off inflammatory processes. A recent meta-analysis concluded that administration of omega-3 fatty acids, usually in combination with an antioxidant, resulted in a shorter stay in the ICU and improved oxygenation. Oily fish, such as salmon and sardines, is the main dietary source of omega-3, and advice is that we should eat at least one portion of this a week. However, many people don't achieve this, often because they don't like fish or because of dietary choices such as veganism. The product shown on the slide is based on flaxseed, which is a plant source of omega-3. Flax seeds contain alpha-linoleic acid rather than EPA and DHA, so this has to be converted by the body to the longer-chain fatty acids. And unfortunately, humans are rather inefficient at doing this, so it is preferential to consume EPA and DHA directly. Also, it's important to note that so far the studies looking at omega-3 and immunity have focused on EPA and DHA and not the shorter-chain fatty acids. Microalgae is also rich in omega-3 fatty acids, and algal oil is approved for use as a food ingredient to fortify products and provide a source of long-chain fatty acids to those consumers who would prefer to avoid eating oily fish. As with vitamins and minerals, it is possible to make a content claim if the omega-3 is present at sufficient levels, and these levels should be verified through analysis over shelf life to support any claims. So I hope that this has given you an overview of the nutrients and ingredients being used in the immunity space and maybe sparked some ideas for your own products. I'll now hand over to Rachel, who will talk about the importance of analytical testing to support product claims.
Thank you, Carole. Hello, everyone. I'm Rachel Reid, Group Leader for the Functional Ingredients and Lipids teams here at RSSL. And we provide analytical support for a large number of functional ingredients such as vitamins, antioxidants, and specialist carbohydrates. When developing your product, it's key that you consider the quality of the ingredients used. If adding botanicals, you will need to be aware of the level of the active chemical in the compounds in the botanical. Will vary with country of origin, parts of the plant used, and seasonal climate changes. As a result, you may notice batch-to-batch variability. Using premixes are a great way of dosing your product. However, the premix is a complex blend of many other ingredients, and therefore you need to ensure it's fit for purpose. Proper dosing of vitamins using a premix is directly linked to food safety, as vitamins are only required in micro amounts. Individually weighing and adding vitamins separately during the food production process carries a high risk. If done incorrectly, nutritional quality or even food safety will be compromised. By blending small amounts of vitamins or other micronutrients required into a carrier to create one ingredient, the premix means that they can be added safely and distributed uniformly throughout the product. When sourcing a premix or ingredient, you'll need to ensure that it will complement your matrix and will be stable during the processing and the shelf life of the product. In order for us to quantify the amounts of these compounds in a sample, we'll need to be able to consider a number of factors, such as the form of the active ingredient, availability of a reference standard of a known concentration, which can be challenging for some botanical compounds, a suitable extraction procedure, stability of the compound, chromatography and conditions in order to separate the compounds, and finally an appropriate detector. Once a suitable method has been identified, this can be used to perform batch-to-batch comparisons, raw material testing, finished product testing for claim substantiation, and to assess if the processing has had an impact on the compound of interest. For an example, a method developed for curcumin where there were a mixture of 3 curcuminoids: curcumin, dimethoxycurcumin, and bis-dimethoxycurcumin. These compounds were isolated by column chromatography and identified by spectroscopic studies. The purity of the curcuminoids was analysed by a HPLC method, with separation being performed on a C18 column using 3 solvents: methanol, 2% acetic acid, and acetonitrile, with detection at 425 nanometers. This method was then used to compare the percentage of the 3 curcuminoids in various turmeric samples. Inulin is a natural soluble fibre that is common in many plants and in recent years has become a popular prebiotic supplement. The structure and chain length of the inulin will impact on the functionality in the product. Shorter chain lengths tend to be more soluble and can be used to replace sugar and glucose syrups, whereas the longer chains can form a fatty gel when rehydrated. However, complexities arise when analysing inulins. It's not as straightforward as quantifying the likes of a vitamin. Inulins are a mixture of polymers with different chain lengths, which, in turn, gives rise to a more complex chromatography profile. However, it is possible to take the resulting chromatograms and use them as a fingerprint to identify the likely sources of inulin that has been added to the product. Inulins at different sources will have different structures, linear or branched, as seen on the slide. and this will impact the complexity of the chromatography, which leads to the differences in the chromatographic profiles, as you can see. And these profiles enable us to use the fingerprint technique. The 7 main vitamins that play an important role in immune health and the recommended daily allowances are listed on the slide. The best source of vitamin is through diet. However, consumers often wish to supplement their intake with fortified food and supplements. For vegans, it can be hard to get enough vitamin B12 in your diet, so it's worth considering a supplement that contains a daily dose. And as Carole mentioned, there are limited dietary sources of vitamin D. And as our bodies produce most of this vitamin from the sun, it is recommended to take a daily supplement of the vitamin during the winter months. There are a number of aspects to consider when choosing what form of vitamin you would wish to add to your product. With a move to clean label, you may consider adding a natural as opposed to synthetic form of vitamin. And this information is critical for the analytical lab to ensure extraction and the chromatography techniques they are using are fit for purpose. For example, an analytical method for beta-carotene is very different to the method used for retinol, despite the fact that both compounds are forms of vitamin A. There are a number of factors that affect the stability of vitamins and functional ingredients: light, temperature, oxidation, humidity, pH, time, and the presence of ingredients that can act as catalysts, such as iron and other compounds with antioxidant properties. It is important to note that these factors affect the different compounds in different ways. For example, vitamin C is affected by oxidation, but not light, while B vitamins are highly sensitive to light. Another aspect to consider when adding your vitamins to your formulations is understanding their chemical structure. For example, when fat-soluble vitamins are incorporated into a drink, a coated or encapsulated form of the ingredient needs to be considered. The physical characteristics of the vitamins also play a key role in the stability of the ingredient. Granular versus a fine powder, the granular form has less surface exposed to oxidation and as such will be more stable over a period of time, like the example provided in the slide. Packaging can also help to increase the shelf life of your product. For example, the use of opaque bottles if the product contains ingredients sensitive to light, and reducing headspace in bottles for products or ingredients sensitive to oxidation. To ensure your product can maintain its label claim over shelf life, you will need to understand the impact of various conditions the product may encounter, and a stability study can provide this information for you. Shelf life is commonly estimated by 2 different stability testing procedures: real-time study and accelerated stability study. In real-time stability testing, a product is stored at recommended storage conditions and monitored until it fails the specification, which can be time-consuming, and for ambient, stable products with a long shelf life, commercial pressure means it's rarely feasible for a full shelf life evaluation to have been completed prior to launch. In accelerated shelf life tests, the chemical, biochemical, and microbiological changes may be induced in a shorter time. In order to achieve this, the product is stored at elevated stress conditions such as temperature, humidity, and pH. Having a robust analytical method in place will ensure that the active ingredient can be monitored for the duration of the study. The slide shows examples of 2 stability studies performed at RSSL. The first study monitored the level of vitamin B3 in a product when stored at 2 different temperatures, room temperature and 30 degrees. The study was conducted over a period of 8 months and the sample analysed at 4 different time points. The second is a study of a soft drink product containing vitamin B6 in a clear bottle. The aim of the study was to compare the levels of the vitamin when stored in the dark and in direct light over a period of 6 months. During the 6 months, samples were analysed at 3 different time points and the results plotted. Both studies show that there was an impact on the vitamin during these accelerated conditions, and this helped the developer decide on the final recipe and what type of packaging to use. Hopefully this has demonstrated how analytical testing can support with claim substantiation, ingredient analysis, and product stability. And on that note, I will now hand you over to Jay.
Okay, so thank you, Carole, Tracey and Rachel for an in-depth overview around the subject of immunity, as well as aspects to consider if you're launching new products in this arena. And as you can see, COVID-19 has changed consumer behaviour, and there are lots of aspects to consider to ensure a successful product launch. And this includes making sure you get your initial product brief right by really understanding the market and the consumer needs. through to including the relevant functional ingredients and conducting relevant analytical testing to confirm they're still there at end of shelf life. So hopefully from today's webinar you can see that support is available to ensure a successful, innovative product is developed and launched into our changing world. So thank you to all those attendees who've asked some questions, and we'll now start to work through some of those questions. So the first question, probably to you, Carole, is apart from dairy, do you have a view on which sectors are seeing the fastest growth for innovative immunity promoting products?
Yeah, definitely the beverage sector, particularly sort of smoothies or fruit juice based beverages, because I think it's easy to incorporate the fruit and vegetable components, which fit very nicely with the immunity proposition, and then fortify with some of these other ingredients on top of that. So definitely in beverages.
Okay, thank you. Next question, probably best for you, Tracey. How do you test sensory and hedonic claims?
Thank you, Jane. Sensory claims, so that would be any claim that relates to a specific product attribute. So, for example, if you just wanted to say something around the fact that the product had an enhanced flavour or a stronger flavour, you can test those, or a thicker texture, you can test those sort of claims using a trained sensory panel. So long as all the panelists recognise and assess the product attribute in a uniform way, you can test sensory claims with a sensory panel. Hedonic claims are those claims around it's new and improved, or mine is better than yours, that sort of thing. And there you really do need to be asking the consumer, because these are questions that are more subjective. So you would definitely be carrying out some sort of consumer trial there. And those things around believability and ownership, you can bring into those sort of tests, or you can use a different approach, a more implicit approach, to really get to the gut reaction of the consumer and their immediate response to products that carry those claims.
Okay, thank you, Tracey. Question for you, Rachel. So how do you monitor the shelf life of a botanical ingredient if there are several compounds present in the ingredient?
Okay, so we can do this by, during the method development, we'll identify some key marker compounds present in the botanical, and then we'll monitor these through the shelf life study.
Okay, thank you. Maybe this next one for you, Carole. Are there any micronutrients that are available to formulate an EFSA immunity claim, preferred by consumers?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, vitamin C and vitamin D are already very well established with consumers as being linked to immunity. So I guess those would be the two that I would think would be the top of the list. But, you know, it's then providing education and information for the consumer, either on pack or through websites, to help explain why you might be using some of the other nutrients as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm conscious of time, and again, apologies for the issue at the start of the webinar. So we've now come to the end of the webinar, and I hope you found it useful, and we appreciate the questions that you've asked. But as we haven't managed to get to all of the questions in the time that we have today, we'll respond to you separately outside of the webinar. So on behalf of the RSSL team, I'd like to thank Tracey for joining us today, and also to thank you for listening and submitting questions. And please do not hesitate to contact us if you have any questions or you need our support with projects. We will send out a copy of the slides following this session. And then once the coronavirus situation has improved, we look forward to hopefully meeting you at future events and hope that we'll be able to meet face to face. So thank you for your time, and I hope you all have a good rest of the day, and please do stay safe in these challenging times. Bye.